All right, wonderful, and welcome back to Master Your Money Mindset. Today I'm going to share with you a couple of the factors that contribute to the creation and the cultivation of our money mindset. And I also have a little exercise for you at the end, so make sure you stick it through all the way to completion, okay? So we're looking at the paradigm and specifically our money mindset or how this relates to our money mindset. And you can remember a paradigm as like a belief system. Okay, and it's formed very specifically early on in our childhood, between the ages of 0 and about 9 or so, based on a number of different factors. Environmental conditions play a role. The location that we grow up geographically. It's easy to see how somebody who grew up in Kentucky or Louisiana in the southern states might have a different belief system as it relates to money, okay, than somebody who grew up in a penthouse suite in the Upper West End of Manhattan, right? Also the kinds of activities that we either participated in or observed in the household or in the community as a young kid, and the specific words or the way that people talked about money or people with money and that sort of thing as we were young. And oftentimes what happens is that becomes embedded in our subconscious belief system or our paradigm, and then goes on to influence and create so much of our future as an adult. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, but it's real. Okay? Now, what are some of the things that you heard about money, okay, growing up? If the words that people use shape our thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions about the world around us, including money, okay, what are some of the things that come to mind for you when you think back to your childhood and maybe some of the conversations that you overheard your parents having about money? Was it a stressful situation? Was it arguments? Oftentimes that's the case. And we oftentimes get conflicting messages when it comes to money. I know that, some of the things that I had heard growing up about money, and maybe you can relate to this, are things like, well, money doesn't buy happiness, and they're right. Money won't buy you happiness. But the truth is that that's not money's job. Okay? If you're looking to make money, or if you're looking to have money make you happy, chances are you probably already lost. Okay? And, money cannot buy you happiness, but it can buy you better quality experiences, okay? Better clothes, better cars, better education, better health care, better food, right? That sort of thing. It will buy you, better experiences for sure. But they've done a number of different studies as it relates to income. And what they found is that there's a kind of a sweet spot there, a magic number that they've identified it to be about $70,000 per year. Okay, that above and beyond that, money doesn't do a whole lot to improve your level of happiness. Once most of your basic needs are taken care of and you don't have to worry about stress or worry about like having a roof over your head or food in the fridge kind of thing, that above and beyond that, money doesn't do a whole lot to increase your baseline level of happiness. Okay? But some of the other things that I heard about money, and maybe you can relate, maybe there's some things that were common in your childhood or household too, growing up, were things like, money doesn't grow on trees, or hey, we're not made of money, or, sometimes people misquote this one, but they've oftentimes heard, and the idea that sticks is money is the root of all evil. The actual quotation, I believe, reads that the love of money is the root of all evil, which is small distinction, but a big difference, okay? Or things like more money, more problems, which implies that, actually we probably don't want more money because it just brings with it a whole cascade of issues, right? Or some of the things like there's actually a clothing brand I've seen some people wear that, dirty hands, clean money. That implies, subtly that, if you're working hard and manual labor and that sort of thing, that, you're honorable. It's kind of a salt of the earth kind of person, okay? That you're coming by your money honestly, right? And if you're not doing that, if you have a white collar job or you're up in a high rise tower or a boardroom somewhere, then well, maybe you're up to some shady shit. Excuse my language, which may or may not be true. I'm not saying, but you get the point. Other things that people share about money are like, well, there's more to life than money, and sure, I mean, that's true. There's more to life than money, but it's hard to do much without it. And I think Bob Proctor says that, that's a ridiculous statement. There's more to life than money. Of course there's more to life than money, but that's like saying there's more to life than air or oxygen. It's like, well, yeah, of course, but you also need it in order to survive. Okay? Or, time is money. Time is money is really an interesting one, because what it does is we don't even realize is it's conditioning us, okay, to trade time for money, oftentimes in the form of a job. And truth be told, that's like the worst trade that we can make. More on that in a later module here. But the social and cultural conditioning that takes place goes deep, And, when they talk about penny saved is a penny earned, or a dollar saved is a dollar earned kind of thing, all of these little kind of like phrases or concepts or ideas or thoughts or beliefs go into our subconscious and start to shape the way that we think about money, our beliefs about money, and what we do with money. Okay? Now that's about money specifically, but what about the things that you heard about people with money? I don't know about you, but sometimes there was this perception the rich people or people who were wealthy or had a lot of money were kind of greedy, or they got lucky, right? They were only wealthy and successful because they got lucky, right? Or maybe there's kind of like a indication that they came about by it dishonestly. The people with a lot of money are either like greedy or slimy or sleazy or selfish, in some cases maybe evil, or there's also this kind of like perception that rich people are like old and grumpy, and if you think about it, like even if you look at a lot of the messaging in mass media, this is how rich people tend to be perceived. People like Scrooge McDuck or Mr. Burns are kind of evil and greedy and old and grumpy and that sort of thing. And, this is just a couple of obviously illustrations and cartoons, but there's a lot of that subliminal or subconscious messaging that goes on in the media and the movies and the TV shows that we watch as young kids, maybe even in books too. Okay. There's also this kind of a concept, and I hear this a lot with artists and musicians, okay, that there's kind of like some honor in being like the struggling artist. And, if you have an album or a piece of work that, goes viral, or you're selling it sort of thing in mass quantities, that it's like, you're kind of a sellout, and it's almost kind of like, I know that for me growing up, there was almost like, it was almost seen as like being noble if you were broke or just getting by, and meant that you were a good person, that you were honest, that you were hardworking, and that you were, just kind of an honest, salt of the earth type of person. Okay? And what's really interesting about all of these messages, all of the messaging, the social and the cultural conditioning that we hear about money and the people who have money versus the people who don't, okay, is that all of that gets absorbed by our subconscious mind and becomes a part of our subconscious programming that shapes the way that we think and feel and behave when it comes to money and people with money. Not to mention the number of different kind of issues that start to arise as far as self-worth is concerned. If somebody has a goal to earn more money, okay, but they feel like, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough, or, things like, I don't have enough education, or, I've been taught that debt is bad and I don't want to go into debt, or, sometimes there's this concept or this notion that, you can't do what you love because doing what you love doesn't pay the bills, or you'll really notice this if you have a coaching program or a product or a service that you provide, that, there's this like, ugh, feeling when you have to charge people for it, or when you ask them for money, and there's almost this kind of like, invisible ceiling where it's like, I don't feel comfortable charging that much. And it's really indicative of kind of our thoughts, our attitudes, our beliefs, and our money mindset or a paradigm, okay? But you can see how, okay, that if you have subconscious beliefs like that about money, and people who have a lot of money, all right, you can see how it would create this kind of like inner conflict, okay? That like, well, people who have a lot of money are greedy and selfish and untrustworthy, they're dishonest, they're old and grumpy and that sort of thing, just looking out for number one. And I want to be seen as somebody who's like trustworthy, likable, accepted, and that sort of thing. And so you can see how it kind of creates this like internal conflict where, it sets us up to fail. And the reason is because like 95% of your behavior, remember, is not controlled by your conscious, logical thinking mind. It's controlled by your subconscious emotional mind, right? And one of the strongest forces in human nature is to remain consistent with those unconscious beliefs about who we are, who we want to be, and our beliefs about money and how we think that the world should operate, okay? And so it's no wonder that oftentimes our behavior doesn't necessarily match our goals. So you might consciously have a goal to earn more and want more, okay? But if unconsciously your beliefs, attitudes, thoughts, and perceptions about money and people who have money aren't positive, it's going to set up a situation where your subconscious beliefs win every time, okay? The other thing about money here is that money's all relative, isn't it? And what I mean is that like what's a lot of money to some people might be peanuts to another, okay? And it's all kind of based on where that thermostat setting is. Personally, I'd love to open my bank account and see, $1 million cash sitting in my, checkings or savings account. I'd be pumped, right? But I mean, chances are if Michael Jordan opened up his bank account and saw that he was down to his last million, he might be stressing. He'd be sweating bullets, and just kind of goes to show that when it comes to money, it's all relative. It's a matter of perspective, okay? So I have a little exercise here for you that I'd like you to do, okay? And this goes back to something that we were talking about the other day as far as where's your thermostat setting in relationship to money or income. And what I'd like you to do is grab that pen and paper, okay? And I want you to ask yourself, how much am I willing to earn per month, okay? And I'm going to read out a few numbers, and I want you to let me know when you get that little feeling or that tinge or that discomfort of like, I don't know, that sounds like a lot, okay? So the first number I'll ask is, how much do you feel comfortable earning? You feel comfortable earning $1,000 a month? $1,000 a month? Most of you are probably going to say, oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, I need more than that to survive, to pay the mortgage, and kids, sports, activities, food, whatever. Okay. What about $2,000 a month? $2,000 a month? Yeah, still? Okay. What about 5,000? 5,000 a month? You okay earning 5,000 a month? Yeah? Okay. What about 10,000 a month? You good? Okay. 25,000? $25,000 a month? Be nice, hey? Who's going to say no to that? Am I right? All right, what about $50,000 a month? $50,000 a month? Okay. All right, yeah, we're getting pretty warm here, huh? Okay, what about $100,000 a month? $100,000 a month. Okay. Or lastly, what about $1 million a month? $1 million a month. How does that sit with you? Even just entertaining the thought or the idea of earning $1 million a month. It's really interesting because sometimes even just an exercise like writing down a goal of earning $1 million a month or visualizing yourself doing something like that can create an emotional response in a person. And it's quite telling, okay? And, I remember the very first time I had a conversation with my coach, and he asked, my goal at the time was to earn $5,000 a month as an online coach. And I thought to myself, well, if I could earn $5,000 a month, do what I love and help people and have the freedom and the flexibility to work from anywhere, I'd be pretty happy with that. $5,000 a month, okay? $60,000 a year, that's not bad, okay? He said, okay, well, what about $10,000 a month? Would you like to earn $10,000 a month? And I was like, yeah, for sure, that'd be cool. Well, man, sign me up, okay? And he said, well, what about $15,000 a month? Would you like to do that? And I was like, okay, whoa, time out. I'm not even sure why we're having this conversation. That just seems like such a moot point. It just seems so like astronomically out of reach and unattainable for me. Sure. And he was like, oh, that's really interesting. He's like, and I was like, what's that? And he's like, well, you won't even allow yourself to entertain the idea of earning $15,000 a month. And I thought, interesting. It's true. And the truth is that thought had never even occurred to me. That wasn't even on my radar as far as kind of like in the realm of possibilities. Earning $15,000 a month as an online coach wouldn't even cross my mind. Okay. Today, I can tell you that I've done significantly more than that. Okay. And I'm surrounded by people in the coaching space who regularly earn 100 or 200, even like $250,000 a month, which is absolutely impressive. Okay. But just kind of goes to show that sometimes it's like those little mental blocks can act as barriers or glass ceilings that prevent us from taking action and ever accomplishing something because we don't even realize that it's possible. Okay? In fact, growing up, I had this belief or this perception that $100,000 a year was a lot of money. And everybody in my life at that time who I knew that was earning over $100,000 a year, they all had some sort of a professional designation. They were either doctors or lawyers or accountants. And I thought, well, without that kind of like, education, without, a PhD or a specialized education and specialized knowledge, that's probably unlikely. Okay. And because of that belief, it was difficult for me to break through that barrier and finally earn $100,000 a year. Okay. But thanks to the work that we're doing here today, as far as changing our money mindset, I'm proud to say that it's much higher than that now. So one of the little things that I thought was helpful to kind of like put things in perspective and change the way that I looked at my earning potential was asking myself, and I encourage you to do the same, ask yourself, like, what's your lifetime earning potential? Okay. And the reason I think this is a really powerful question is because it's pretty high, and it's really amazing that like, even if you earn like $50,000 a year, okay, but you work for, 40 years, that's over $2 million, which kind of just goes to show that, it's not just how much you earn, okay, it's how you use it, and how much of it you keep, okay, because potentially you're going to be in contact with millions of dollars throughout the course of your life anyway. And so having a better, more positive and empowering money mindset will help us to ensure that we're not just burning through it and self-sabotaging. Cool? So, I had mentioned at the beginning of the call today that I have a short little exercise for you. And here's what I'd like you to do. Okay? I want you to imagine for a moment that money was a person. Okay? Yeah, I'd like you to personify money. Okay? And, you know, if you think about like how you think and how you feel about money, I would like you to write a love letter to money as if it's a person. I said on our very first little module here that our money mindset you can think of as like a relationship with money. We all have a relationship with money whether we realize it or not. Okay, it's our thoughts, our attitudes, and our conscious and unconscious beliefs about money. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do. Write a letter to money, and you can start it however you like dear money, and then go on to just write down anything and everything that comes to mind as far as your relationship with money, how you feel about it, how you think about it. Okay, and it was really telling. The first time I ever did this exercise, my love letter to money was pretty sad and pretty sappy. I don't remember exactly what it was. I still have it somewhere. It's in my, actually I know exactly where it is. But it sounded like a sad kind of desperate love letter to a woman, which is like, hi money, I sure like you. I don't know if you like me. I like it when we hang out together. Certainly get excited to see you and sad every time you leave. Because truth be told, I don't know when you're going to be coming back again. Okay, I'd like to hang out with you more. I can think of lots of fun stuff that we'd like to do together. I hope to see more of you again in the future. Take care. Signed, Matt. And once I wrote it all down on paper and I saw in black and white the kind of attitude and the energy that I had about money, it just reeked of desperation and scarcity. And it was pretty revealing. And then the second part to this exercise, okay, so part one is to write a letter to money from your current money mindset, okay? And then part two, I'd encourage you to give some thought as to how you would like that relationship with money to sound like, to look like, or to feel like, and write a love letter to money from that new perspective, or that new confidence, or that new money mindset, and see if you can compare and contrast the two. But that's your homework for today. Good luck, and let me know how it goes. Cool.